I want to chat with you a little bit this morning about the general direction that I believe the Conservative Party needs to go, and not just the Conservative Party, but the movement itself. I'm not here to announce any specific policy proposals. We've got a little over 24 months until the next election is expected, so we'll be unveiling what we believe the next campaign should be fought on in the months to come. But in the meantime, we will be doing what loyal oppositions are supposed to do. We will play a constructive role in Parliament, holding the Liberals to account and pointing out where they are failing Canadians. But I thought today I could give you a kind of a general guideline, guiding principles that we'll be following over the next little bit. Now, some people have pointed out that I tend to smile a heck of a lot and that it's hard to tell when I'm really passionate about something. But I believe that's important for Conservatives. You know, sometimes politics can get negative and people, and especially the media, concentrate on the things that go wrong far more often than the things that go well. And as I mentioned, my father used to work at a newspaper, and he would often say that you don't see too many articles on all the planes that land safely. But one of the reasons why I wanted to run for the leadership in the first place was because I believe that Conservatives have so much to be positive about. First of all, our party is united. We had a leadership race that saw, at one point, 16 people in total participate. It was sometimes easier to rattle off the people who weren't running for the race than those that were. But they each brought such a passionate articulation of what they believe the Conservative Party should focus on and what they believed we should rally around going into the next election. And it was compelling and it was dynamic. And for those of you that may have gotten one, maybe two emails, an hour. My campaign manager said to me at the end of the race that just our campaign alone, if you look at the entire membership, we sent out over 10 million emails. So sure, shares in spam companies and blockers have gone up. But in the process, our party grew from 80,000 members to over 260,000. We had one of the best fundraising quarters in our party's history before the race even finished. We've got a united caucus. We've got about 98, 99 hardworking individuals from all over the country, people who bring a wide diversity of backgrounds and experience to Parliament, and we're doing well. Our policies can be positive because they are based on the fundamental desire to see the quality of life for all Canadians improve. And in order to lay the groundwork for the next election, I believe we have to do two things. First, we have to fight the lie of the left. And the second, we have to articulate that positive vision based on Conservative principles in a way that will resonate with Canadians in a more practical way. Now, when I speak about the lie of the left, what I mean is that the very people that they claim to help are hurt the most by their policies. Now, that's the case today. There's so many examples we can look at. We have reckless spending and exploding debt. We have an anemic economy, higher taxes. This is the change that Trudeau has brought in. It's true throughout Canada at the national level, and even more so here in Ontario. I mean, just a couple years ago when I started getting messages from friends and family in Ontario about what's going on with hydro rates, for example, I couldn't believe it at first. I said, no government would allow your hydro rates to double. And then they would send me screenshots of their bills. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's actually happening. And now the very architects of this disastrous policy here in Ontario are, of course, running the PMO. These new disastrous taxes, regulation, and hikes in energy costs have forced businesses to close and literally thousands of people on the unemployment lines. During the campaign, I met a manufacturer in Markham who told me that just because of the energy costs alone, he's reduced his production line from 5 days a week down to just 3. And he's seriously looking at moving south of the border if that carbon tax gets imposed. So there are real practical effects to these decisions that Liberals take. Now, the national carbon tax, which will raise the price of everything people buy, its burden falls heaviest on those with the least because, according to Statistics Canada, food, fuel, and home heating take up a third more of household budgets for poor families than for rich ones. And we know that it won't protect the environment. To protect our planet, we must start with the private sector and work outwards. We need to leverage the power of the private sector, not punish it. We are a nation that produces around 1.6% of global emissions, but we are leading the way in fields such as carbon capture, clean coal, and other technologies designed to lower greenhouse gases. And because of these technologies, the previous Conservative government became the first in Canada to preside over a reduction in greenhouse gases while the economy grew. But that's not what the Liberals are doing. I hate cliches, but you know the one where they say that when all you have is a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail? The Liberals, that hammer is always more taxes. Not just carbon taxes. Income taxes are up, payroll taxes. The last budget slapped new taxes on Uber, beer, wine, got rid of the transit tax credit Prime Minister has made taking public transit more expensive. And just last night, we learned that the Liberals are now planning on taxing the internet. I don't know what Al Gore would have to say about that, but... So one of the questions I got a lot during the campaign was, what exactly am I getting for all these new taxes I pay? Well, mostly complicated new schemes for those connected enough with the government. And this is what I mean by the lie of the left. We heard so much during the campaign about the middle class and those working hard to join it. All these new taxes hit those working Canadians harder than anyone else. And in the meantime, policies that benefit not just the 1%, but the 0.1%. Take, for example, the $35 billion taxpayer-funded infrastructure bank. Now, Conservatives always believe that private investment in infrastructure is a good thing. And when in office, we encourage those public-private partnerships. We did this with the goal of putting the risk on the shoulders of those who could control it, builders and the investors, not taxpayers. Fixed-price contracts and bankruptcy insurance protected taxpayers in the event that a project or its builder went under. But the proposed infrastructure bank does exactly the opposite. It gives government loan guarantees to investors, so their losses fall on the shoulders of taxpayers. And it also forces taxpayers to take, quote, subordinated equity positions in mega projects. That means taxpayers get first dibs on losses and investors get first dibs on the profits. And finally, while the government claims the bank will attract private money to public projects, in fact, it is now going to offer loan guarantees to projects that are already privately funded, such as electrical generation. It nationalizes loss while privatizing profit. What they're doing is effectively asking hardworking Canadian families to co-sign loans for large corporations, hedge fund managers, and international investors. Conservatives believe that risk and reward must go together. Investors should have the opportunity to profit by building world-class infrastructure if they, and not the taxpayers, shoulder the risk. Anything else is unfair and is just corporate subsidies, which is ironic for a Prime Minister who said during the election that he would stop governments from giving checks to millionaires. Instead, it seems he's giving checks to billionaires. So I guess you can say that's a promise kept, because it's technically true. Only weeks after he handed $400 million to Bombardier, the company gave its executives massive raises. This is yet another example of government wealth transfer from middle-class and hardworking taxpayers to the super-rich. And I thought of Bombardier last night. I took Porter Airlines into Billy Bishop, the Toronto Island Airport, and we'll all remember a couple of years back when the new Liberal government, I think it was one of the first announcements they made, and I think they made the announcement over Twitter actually, announced that they were effectively going to block the expansion of the airport, which would have enabled Bombardier's C-Series planes to land there. That effectively killed $2 billion worth of the company's sales to Porter Airlines. That's not just wrong, but it's strange. The Liberals claim the reason they have plunged us into deficit is to fund infrastructure. That airport expansion is infrastructure, which a City of Toronto report says would boost economic growth by $124 million. Liberals claim to want to reduce congestion and pollution, yet the expansion would have allowed more business people to fly directly to the business district, reducing polluting car traffic between Pearson Airport and downtown. Moreover, Liberal governments are raising taxes because they need revenue, yet the airport revenue would generate $55 million new through that expansion without a tax increase. That's according to a report by Urban Strategies prepared for the City of Toronto. It's the same with pipelines. They add new approval requirements that will delay the Energy East project by 9 more months at a cost to the Canadian economy of $38 million per day. Then the Prime Minister offers increased EI, or unemployment, for unemployed energy workers in Alberta and New Brunswick who would have jobs were the pipeline built. Here again is the irony. The government harms workers with pipeline delays and then offers a subsidy to make up for it. Elsewhere, the Liberals cut tax-free savings account limits from $10,000 to $5,000 and then forces people to save more through the government-controlled Canada Pension Plan. And that, of course, is funded through higher payroll taxes. The Liberal government blocks growth and then subsidizes growth. It raises taxes on savings and then forces people to save more. They force low-income taxpayers to subsidize wealthy investors, and then they say we need new programs to reduce the gap between rich and poor. They weigh down small business with red tape and taxes, and then tell these same businesses to apply for a government grant or a loan. Another example of the lie of the left is the entire conversation around opportunities for young people. Now, I'm on the younger side of the scale when it comes to politics. I'm certainly much, much younger than the Prime Minister, and I think it's time. I think it's finally time that my generation has a voice in Parliament. But ask yourselves the question, who suffers first when payroll taxes go up? Young people. New entrants into the workforce, those that haven't yet developed the skills and training at a workforce. Those payroll taxes will harm the very people that the left claim to help the most. Conservative approaches to these types of issues, allowing businesses to expand and hire more people, making it easier to attract investment and to grow their workforce, that's what creates opportunities for young people. Now, we've all heard that Ronald Reagan quote about when Liberals see something move, they tax it. If it keeps moving, they regulate it. And when it finally stops moving, they subsidize it. So we ask ourselves the question, why not just stay out of the way in the first place? And I think one of the big reasons for Liberal politicians is that if they did that, they would become so much less important. Conservatives are happy to create the conditions where people can have that opportunity and then get out of the way. But to a Liberal, they always have to be in there. And if we did that, it would they wouldn't really have a role to play. They wouldn't like that. It would kind of be like airbrushing them out of a selfie. They just wouldn't have a reason to be there. They're the ultimate economic busybodies, always turning up uninvited, always trying to be the center of attention, always in the way and always causing more problems than they solve. And I think one of the problems with those on the left as well is that they kind of view the economy as a giant computer console, and you can manage it by pressing buttons here and providing some innovation and pulling a lever and subsidizing a company and maybe putting in the right formula and getting a supercluster all of a sudden. But we know that doesn't happen. The economy grows organically. There wasn't a government white paper that created the high-tech cluster in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. It happened organically. Hardworking people take an idea, an innovative way of doing something. They convince investors to take that risk, to invest in that company, and then when it works, it explodes and it takes off. And then governments always say, well, how can we replicate that with more government? And how can we make what happened there happen over here? And they start pulling those dials and pulling those levers, pressing those buttons. So we know that doesn't work. Now, to be fair, I do believe that the Prime Minister and I agree on one thing, that businesses should be able to make money. But where we disagree is the how. Because I believe in a free market where businesses profit by having the best product or service. He believes in a government-directed economy where governments pick winners and losers, and only those with strong partisan ties can count on receiving favors. The first approach allows anyone to get ahead based on merit. The second brings that element of partisan connections into the mix. And this is personal for me. My working class parents used to tell me all the time that their greatest accomplishment, the way that they would be able to measure if they had done their jobs as parents, would be if my sisters and I had a better quality of life than they did. And I really do believe that that is the Canadian experience. It's the story of most families, and that's the purpose of why we all go out and do what we do in life. It's the why. And that's what I think Conservatives need to do better. And I talked about a positive message that we'll articulate with a broader audience of Canadians in a more practical way. We have to talk about the why, what motivates us. Often, Conservatives go right to results, whereas Liberals like to concentrate on intentions. And the problem with the left's approach is that they stop at intentions. So they come and they announce a policy, and all they're trying to do is show that they care about something. And they don't care if there's any actual improvement to the people that they're trying to help, as we mentioned, all those people who are hurt the most by left-wing policies. But Conservatives have an equally important problem that we have to address, and that's what I'd like to do over the next 2 years and beyond. And that's to show that we too have those same intentions. The left should not have a monopoly on things like compassion. What's more compassionate for low-income Canadians than a Conservative government that's always looking for ways to allow the economy to grow, for those opportunities to be created? What's more uncompassionate than a government that's raising those taxes on both on individuals, on consumers, and on businesses trying to expand and offer opportunities? So we have to talk about the why. Conservatives will always be for lowering taxes on businesses, on corporations, small businesses, medium, all kinds, because we know that that's good for Canadian people. We don't do it because we like black ink on a ledger or because we just like to watch the stock market go up. We do it because we know that those retained earnings go into dividends, it goes into portfolios. I think a lot of people, when they talk about corporate tax cuts in a negative way, they picture a bunch of people in top hats, wearing monocles, sitting around a boardroom table, just getting ready for the 2 o'clock money fight that we're going to have. But when we talk about corporate taxes, we have to do it in a way that resonates with people, with Canadian people. My dad has mutual funds invested in Canadian companies. He also has a post-media pension. So we need those private sector pension plans to do well, because there are a lot of anxieties when it comes to retirement savings. So when we talk about lowering taxes on Canadian companies, we need to talk about it in a way that connects the dots to individual Canadians. We're doing it so that there's more opportunities for young people to work. We're doing it so that as people approach retirement age, they can be confident that their investments, their mutual funds, their savings are invested in Canadian companies that have a chance to succeed and expand and grow. And that wealth is that prosperity benefits everyone in Canada. And that's the ultimate difference between those on the right and those on the left. And that is, we are focused on prosperity. We're focused on creating prosperity and opportunities for everyone. Yes, we have to make sure that there is equality of opportunity, that everyone in Canada has the chance to succeed, has the opportunity to improve their life. But those on the left play and they engage in the politics of envy, where it's more important to look at how we can take from some others to address those gaps. And in the process, they hurt the system that allows the prosperity to be created in the first place. When we sign trade deals, we don't do it to get a good trade balance report. We do it to lower prices for consumers and give our small businesses owners millions of new customers all around the world. We don't lower payroll taxes to get favorable press releases from the Chamber of Commerce. We do it so that single working mom takes more home out of her paycheck so that she can spend it on her kids' summer camp. We do it so that those young people have those opportunities. When we balance the budget, we don't just do it for a better credit rating with Moody's or Standard & Poor's. We do it so that less of your tax dollars goes to pay interest payments to banks. I know that one of the big sponsors is TD, so no offense on that, but I just don't want my tax dollars. I don't want my tax dollars going to pay interest on debt. And we see already that the Bank of Canada is talking about raising rates. The U.S. has already indicated they're going down that path. Just 0.25% hike in interest rates will mean at least $1 billion in your new taxes going to service that debt. We won't get anything new for it other than just servicing the debt that we've already racked up. And I've said this a lot during the campaign. One of the things I see happening, and one of the reasons why I got into this race and into politics, is because I don't want Justin Trudeau to do to my generation the same thing that his father did. I don't want Justin Trudeau to do to my kids' generation the same thing that his father did to my generation. And he's doing it with those massive new deficits. And it goes against what the Canadian experience is. Racking up these massive deficits, we have to find a way to make Canadians care about the deficits. And some polling is indicating that more and more people are realizing the threat that's out there. When governments rack up these deficits for no benefit today, we're not really seeing any of the benefit that was promised. We're just leaving my kids with the credit card bill for his spending. And that's not just, it's intergenerational theft to leave my kids as they enter into the workforce, yours, paying the bill for spending that happened years ago. And that's what happened to my generation. All of us in this room are still paying off that debt from 20 and 30 years ago. So we have to connect the dots on that and ensure that Canadians understand the danger of these massive new deficits year after year piling onto the debt. And the reason why I think Canadians are getting more and more upset about this is it goes against the entire fabric of Canadian society. When you think about what families do from coast to coast in every walk of life, whether people have been here for multiple generations or whether they're new Canadians who have come here for new opportunities, how many people do we know in this room who have come to Canada and they've lived above a restaurant or behind a store as they work hard and they scrimp and they save and they sacrifice, all so that their kids have a better opportunity than they did? And they take pride in that. They take pride in watching their children go off to university or college, and they know that they got to go there because of all those years that they were sacrificing and going without and not buying that new car and not buying those fancy suits, putting everything back into the business so that they could provide that opportunity. And what the Liberals are doing is the exact opposite. They're racking up all that spending today and borrowing from future generations' prosperity. But they're not going to pay it back. Future generations will. So people who are too busy earning a good life for their families are too often forgotten. They don't often have time for politics, and they certainly don't have well-connected insiders in Ottawa. Yet they deserve their voice, and I am committed to being that voice for them. Dans les prochains mois, nous allons présenter des politiques fondées sur ces principes conservateurs. In the months ahead, we'll be putting forward specific policy proposals based on these conservative principles. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here this morning. We have a lot of work to do over the next few months, but I am so encouraged by the number of people who have come out after the leadership race and said, we're ready to get to work. We're ready to build that conservative movement based on these guiding principles, that there's more to society than just government, that we can have a government that takes care of those who are disadvantaged, but always focused on creating that prosperity for all Canadians, because that's what benefits hardworking Canadians at the soccer fields and the Legion halls and the grocery stores. We're going to be that voice for them. I will take the fight to Ottawa for them, and I hope I can count on each and every one of you to help me do that. Thanks very much. It's been a great pleasure to be with you.